Kaulig Racing. Matt Kaulig, you're the man. Let's party.
AJ Allmendinger will cross the yard of bricks, the winner of the first ever road course race for the Cup Series. Let's go! Hey, baby, we don't do it the easy way.
Rise and shine, everyone. Let's put a smile on that face. This is the Trophy Hunters podcast, a podcast dedicated to what I believe is the most influential, inspirational, fan-focused, community-serving NASCAR team there is today, Kaulig Racing, owned by Matt Kaulig, operated by Chris Rice and the men and women at Kaulig Racing. I have to say, and I'm sure you're asking why are we doing a Kaulig Racing podcast? Well, right off the top, to be fully, transparent with you, it's not just a Kaulig Racing podcast. Yes, the primary focus of this podcast is going to be following on-track and off-track activity with Kaulig Racing. That is the focus of the podcast. But every single episode, we're going to do a stop and go, almost like you're serving a penalty, and we'll stop with the Kaulig talk, and we'll move on to other happenings around the NASCAR world. A little bit about me. I'm Sean, father of three from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Yeah, that's right, from Canada. Diehard NASCAR fan. I definitely have a story to tell, and maybe some of you can relate to me. But let's start off with this. Why are we doing a podcast on Kaulig Racing? You know, you have Hendrick Motorsports, you have Joe Gibbs Racing, you have Penske, you have Stewart-Haas Racing. And the truth is, it's really easy to cheer for the powerhouse teams that, year in, year out, are going to be competitive. What's not easy to do is to really, fall in love with a relatively new team to the sport and really follow their path to success. Think where they started. Leaf Filter for Kaulig was just a sponsor at first. And then they looked at Chris Rice has told the story a bunch of times. They looked at how much it was costing them, and Matt, for that matter, and they went and started a cup team, or not a cup team, pardon me. They went and started a NASCAR team, which is just incredible. And I gotta say, it's the attitude that the team, the organization, the people that buy into it, put out there. You feel like you're part of the team. You feel like you're part of the family. I've never, at least in my life, wanted a team to be more successful than Kaulig Racing. Now, one of the reasons I feel this way is I've been an AJ Allmendinger fan. I remember watching AJ Allmendinger. This is after they moved him out of the blue Red Bull 84 car. And he might have still been 84, actually, but he was driving the silver Red Bull car. I know he was splitting duties with Mike Skinner at the time. And he had failed to qualify for a race. It might have been Bristol. I don't remember off the top of my head. But he had a pretty animated interview afterwards. And I just thought to myself, that dude's entertaining. That dude's real. That dude's saying exactly what's on his mind. And I think there's too many times, especially in NASCAR, where you have a team owner sort of get near the driver and say, no, don't air out your grievances. Keep everything low key. And I mean, hey, you don't want any toxicity following your team around. You don't want the drama. You just don't need it. And yet at the same time, the way I viewed Kaulig Racing and the way they operate is they let the drivers come in and be themselves. Do they help try to take the tools that are at their disposal and make a driver better? Absolutely. That's totally what the team's about. But it really is a team atmosphere. I can't tell you how many times there was word about AJ not being overly happy at Richard Petty Motorsports when he went there, ownership issues aside, which he does not have to worry about at Kaulig Racing. He was just very unhappy. He didn't feel like it was a very team atmosphere, and I get it. I absolutely 110% get it. As a guy who runs a different YouTube channel based in the fandom community, I get the whole needing to operate as a team. You do if you want to be successful. Now, let's dive in a little bit to to what's going on with Kaulig Racing right now. On this show, we're going to talk about the big one, Kyle Busch. That's right, the Kyle Busch rumors going around. We're going to talk about AJ Allmendinger and maybe some of the things that aren't being talked about right now that should be talked about right now. Their 2023 Cup lineup, the Kaulig Fan Day on October the 5th. We're going to talk about Matt Kaulig, Kaulig Racing, Chris Rice. We're going to talk about AJ Allmendinger's performance. And there's a lot of talk about what the 2023 Cup lineup is going to look like for Kaulig. But we're going to spend a little time also talking about what the 2023 Xfinity lineup might look like for Kaulig. Darlington Xfinity results are in. That happened last night. We'll go over what happened with there and preview the Cup race for today, and then we will finish off with a stop and go around the sport outside of Kaulig. Let's dive in to the first subject of this show. So I'm not sure people could have predicted this time last year that Kyle Busch would seemingly be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, keeping in mind that is not official yet, and typically in pro sports, when everybody speculates about a free agent or a trade happening, more often than not, the most anticlimactic thing that could happen is that person just stays where they are, and that's usually where it ends. And I do think that's still a possibility, but I do want to talk about the potential of Kyle Busch coming to Kaulig Racing, and more so the evidence that already exists that maybe something's in place or close to in place despite what is being said in the media. Now, if I'm being fully transparent, I thought for a little bit now there's been enough evidence to support the argument that Kyle Busch already has a deal in place with Kaulig Racing. He's saying all the right things in the media, telling them that he hasn't made a decision yet and there's still other teams at play. But the problem with that is Brad Keselowski did literally the exact same thing. And it happens all the time in professional sports where someone's just not allowed to talk till there's a deal done. I can't say that I know that for certain. I'm definitely not in position to say that, but one of the things I do for work is I operate a fandom YouTube channel on the side of this where we look at the business side of entertainment, and usually there are signs things are about to happen before they happen. More specifically, though, I follow Kaulig Racing very, very closely and understand how they typically work their social media accounts and when they tease things before they happen or before they're official. So there's definitely a history with that stuff. As well. But could Kyle Busch stay at Joe Gibbs? Absolutely. The longer this goes, the more likely I actually think that is. But I still place Kaulig Racing in the driver's seat. And the big reason for that is Kyle Busch Motorsports. If this was just about where Kyle Busch was going to drive, it would already be done. He said that himself. It's not. It's about maintaining maintaining his truck team and eventually racing alongside his son. He doesn't want to go through this again. He doesn't want a short-term deal. We're talking very long-term deal. How many teams outside of Kaulig Racing are in position to give Kyle Busch 5, 6, 7, 8-year deal? My guess is basically none. That includes Joe Gibbs Racing. That includes Hendrick. Now, could he be in a better standing with equipment if he chose one of those places? Absolutely. But is he going to get that 5 to 8-year deal from them? I don't believe it for a second. I want to take a moment to look at the evidence that Kyle Busch may, in fact, be going to Kaulig Racing, but that the evidence also adds up to a couple of other dominoes, and some people might like them and some people might not. But let's take a look at the evidence that we've compiled, and then I'm going to tell you why Kyle Busch to Kaulig Racing is a good thing, but why there's something else already in the works with Kaulig Racing that's not necessarily related to Kyle Busch.
Where else is he going to go? I mean, it's the 18 or it's the 41. The 10's already got a driver. In my opinion, that guy's not retiring. It's the 41. It's the 18. I mean, you hear Trackhouse rumors. I don't think there's anything there.
I think there's 2 to 3 charters that are being available to buy.
Whose?
I don't think I should say whose, but I know there's 2 and there's potentially 3. But I also know there's more than 3 people, more than 3 organizations that want a charter.
Yeah.
So,
like who?
Well, I mean, Dale Jr., we know he wants charter, right?
Denny wants one.
We know Denny wants one.
I thought Kyle was coming.
I promise you right now,
to Dale Jr.'s.
Matt Kaulig would buy one because Matt Kaulig is Matt Kaulig. Awesome people to work for and a very aggressive businessman. If he had a charter to buy, he'd buy it. So I think there's a lot of moves to be made. But again, if you're going to buy a charter and you don't have a sponsor, how the hell do you afford Kyle Busch?
Yeah.
If he's going to make what he's making right now, and that seems to be the thing.
That was Brett Griffin and the fellas over at the Door Bumper Clear podcast. You Find that at Dirty Mo Media. They, you can tell, this was a little over a month ago now, but you could tell that they were pretty sure it was down to the 18 and the 41, and the 41 seems to be all but out. I don't even think that's a consideration at this point, and I thought that Brett Griffin raised some very valid points about the Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch dynamic there, although there could be another dynamic at play soon that definitely might have some issues, but we'll wait and see on that front. But he made perfectly clear Matt Kaulig is in the business to buy another charter. There's been rumors all season about Matt Kaulig possibly adding a third charter. I want to take a moment and look at a couple of tweets that they have put out, or a couple of tweets people have put out of further coverage from the Door Bumper Clear podcast that I wasn't able to find and get the clip, but I want to put it out there anyway. This Twitter user put out there, according to the DBC podcast, when it comes to Kyle Busch, he won't be back at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023. Mentions Kaulig as a favorite, also mentions 40% going to Chevy, 30% chance going to Ford, 20% chances it stays in Toyotas. Does that mean the 10% chance is Dodge? Because that math doesn't add up. Maybe 10% he just doesn't race at all. I don't know. And nor would I put too much stock into this, but the fact that this did happen, and it happened after the clip that I just played, so the shall we say the tune is changing over with the DBC guys, who didn't even mention Kaulig as a possibility outside of Brett Griffin, and then they all of a sudden they're the favorite. Again, this was sometime after that clip that we played before, and then we move on to the next tweet, which they point out something rather interesting, and that is Brett Griffin is quiet on the Kyle Busch situation this week on DBC, then picks him as one of his championship picks. Seriously, can you hide it any worse? Just amplified KB to Kaulig. I'm not sure I buy any of that or agree with any of that, but I do think there is more evidence to suggest that Kyle Busch is on his way to Kaulig, or at the very least, they're one of the favorites and a player for him. Let's get into the rest of that evidence and what it means for other people. Off the top, I mentioned earlier that I follow Kaulig Racing very closely, closer than any other NASCAR team out there. I follow their social media. I love the way they do things. And over the last few years, I've noticed that they love to tease things out before making it official. This is not grasping at straws either. There's hard evidence to back this up. When AJ was coming to the team for part-time Xfinity driving, they teased the shit out of that. When he was going to be a full-time driver, instead of just announcing it, it looked like Allmendinger was going to peel off the tape on the 11 car to reveal his name, and he did, but it was Justin Haley returning to the 11, which was a fun little bit, although my Allmendinger-loving heart hurt a little bit after that. Then they were teasing the 10 car, and we thought for sure it would be the 10 car. Well, guess what? It wasn't the 10 car. That was Jeb Burton, although they teased it like it just for them to reveal once it was finally official that AJ Allmendinger would be driving the 16 car for Kaulig Racing. There was a little glitch graphic that went out that showed the 16. So I dig it. I really do. That's the way they operate. They also teased out the charter announcement and going Cup Racing. They tease out all their big moves on social media. They're very social media savvy. So when we see this tweet, and just like that Watkins Glen came and went, hear from our 4 drivers after some rowdy road racing at the Glen. You might think I'm grasping at straws here, and maybe to an extent I am a little. I'm definitely not on the previous stuff that I had mentioned, but for shits and giggles, I went back and investigated all of the Kaulig Racing full post-race reports from this year, and guess how many times they use the word rowdy? Never until right then. And it just so happens to come on the heels of all the Kyle Busch to Kaulig Racing rumors that came out that same weekend and leading into that weekend. So is there something there? I think time will tell. I absolutely believe it is, but I have to admit, when that tweet was put out, I thought it was done. I'm less sure about it being done now. If I had to predict, I think they're at a place where they're close to a deal, but there's so many moving parts. As Kyle Busch has said, you're talking about, is there a manufacturer change involved? Would that mean changing the shop and the location? I don't think so. I think if he's going to Kaulig, Chevy's helping, make that move happen, and Kaulig's probably getting way more factory backing in the process. So the team in general should be stronger next year if they land Kyle Busch. Let's hear what Dale Jr. had to say during, I believe it was practice or qualifying yesterday at Darlington.
Watching Kyle Busch on the racetrack, and he is. There's a lot of storylines around this guy. And right now, we're waiting on to figure out where he's going to race next year. Is he going to stay with Toyota? What Toyota team that might be? He's going to to a different manufacturer. He says he's got a lot of offers on the table. I think I know where it's going to go, but it's still to be determined.
Are you keeping that?
Well, I said it a month ago. I think it's Kaulig.
Okay.
He goes to Kaulig. I think Kaulig's the only guy that can pay him what he wants, and I think Kaulig is a great opportunity for Kyle to go build something and help that team become a legitimate contender. If Kaulig's serious, Kaulig's spending the money. He's serious about this ownership, but he needs that veteran talent driver, that marquee #1 A guy, and this could change that organization if they were able to get Kyle.
I want to bring your attention to a couple of Justin Haley interviews. One we have the clip of, one we don't. But the first one, he has a pretty bad poker face when being asked about Kyle Busch, and he sort of smiles nervously and says that obviously it would give the team more factory backing, which would be a huge step in the right direction. And then he, again, smiles more nervously and says, but he wouldn't know anything about that. The problem is the next day he got into the cup accident there with the rain, and he was pretty upset and maybe was a little more candid than he should have been. Let's take a listen.
Justin Haley, you were having a great run. You guys took the risk on strategy, but as you went off into one, was there just no grip?
Yeah, I mean, it was raining for a good lap before we got down into turn one. My spotter said coming out of two, the previous lap, that it was raining. Then we just lost traction. So pretty unacceptable, but I thought we did a good job all day with our Celsius Chevrolet, putting ourselves in position. Brett Griffin, Trent Owens, my crew chief, called that, stayed out, hoping for rain earlier. But, yeah, just tough, man, fighting for my ride, fighting for my life every day. So
fighting for my ride and fighting for my life every day. I believe Justin Haley is signed through next season, too. So why is he fighting for his ride? Well, it's a numbers game. We just heard Brett Griffin mention earlier that Kaulig is trying to acquire a third charter. That rumor's been out there for a while this season. So the fact is, though, they have not done that yet to our knowledge. So that leaves two rides. Well, even if Kyle Busch comes into the fold, why would Justin Haley be fighting for his ride? I'd also love to point out that I don't think Justin Haley deserves to lose his ride. Maybe another year in Xfinity as being the guy might help him. He's still very young, too. But I don't believe he deserves to lose his ride. I think he's shown enough this year that he should maintain that ride. But here's why it might happen. You need to continue to get better as a team. If Kyle Busch is coming in, there's still a ride available. So why would Justin Haley, let's theoretically say Kyle Busch deal is already done. Then why is Justin Haley fighting for his ride? And if the deal's not done, again, why were those comments made? When you're emotional, you tend to say things just in the heat of the moment. And a lot of the times, there's a lot of truth to them. And I think this is the case with Justin Haley. I'm sure the team wasn't overly thrilled that he was that public about it. I do think their hand was tipped a bit with that. That's just the way that I feel. But I do believe there's something to this. And I think the other obstacle in the way here is somebody, well, I'll get to that in a second. Let's review further evidence. So how does all this connect? Well, this is how I view it, and this is what we do on our other YouTube channel. We take a look at the information that we have available to us, and we determine the best, most likely conclusion, and that's how we've been able to run scoops and stuff over on the entertainment side of things, and been fairly accurate, especially in the horror community. Racing's a little different. I'm not going to claim to have nearly as much insider knowledge, if any. I'm simply looking at things for what they are and following this team as closely as I have. Kaulig announces this fan day. Obviously, the big 2023 Cup driver announcement is listed there as well. Immediately, the rumors heat up again about Kyle Busch going, and that this is going to be the Kyle Busch unveil. Some people are saying, well, it can't be Kyle Busch because he said 7 to 10 days. This is still a month from now. He didn't say that there's something to announce in 7 to 10 days, I want to remind people. He simply said there would be a decision in that time. That doesn't mean anything officially gets announced before then, but you can, bet your bottom dollar that it's probably going to leak out through the media because most things do. However, I don't believe that this is what that is, and here is why. Earlier this year, there started to be a few rumors about AJ Allmendinger possibly being more open to returning to the Cup Series full time. I know a lot of people have adamantly said online and on Twitter and on their socials that AJ said he doesn't want to go full time and this and that. Well, AJ has been very, very good in that new car, and that new car is what represents the future of the sport moving forward. He's been so bloody good this year that if he doesn't get wrecked at Coda and go from first to 33rd, even if you give him a third place finish, and if he doesn't have the late spin with the power steering issue at Sonoma, I know ifs, buts, candies, and nuts, but like these aren't things that are happening in the middle of the race. These are things that are happening at the very end of the race, and that's not even taking into consideration the heating suit issue that he had at Indy. You take the two finishes that he lost some positions on, one massively, and AJ Allmendinger has a average finishing position of 14.07. That is better than 11 of the 16 chase drivers, keeping in mind that there are only AJ's only run about half the amount of races they have. So, you know, and a lot of them have been road courses too. 5 of the 13 events, I believe he's listed in. That includes the All-Star race. But I believe that this announcement is AJ Allmendinger, guys. I do not believe this is a Kyle Busch announcement. I'm not saying Kyle Busch can't happen on that day. I'm not saying Kyle Busch can't happen before that. I do think the Kyle Busch Motorsports portion of it makes it far more complicated than people realize. But this here, I believe, is AJ Allmendinger, and I think all the evidence is right where you need it. If you look at this photo that I have up on the screen, you'll notice that the colors are white, kind of like that, royal blue, purple look. White and sort of the gold yellow look. They're not Kaulig colors. They're not leaf filter colors. They're not Kaulig company colors. I wouldn't be reading into this if they weren't identical colors to what AJ's primary sponsor's been most of the time this year, and that is of Action Industries. I just pulled a new picture up on screen, and as you can see, the theme of the flyer is identical to the Action Industries logo and branding. So I do believe that Action Industries, who, by the way, said on Twitter earlier this year, they want to be on the car as much as possible with AJ. I believe AJ Allmendinger is returning to the Cup Series, and hopefully with Action Industries, and hopefully, Nutrient Egg Solutions goes up there as well. But I would bet a lot of money that this October 5th announcement is AJ Allmendinger returning to the Cup Series, and it's what's best for the team. Kaulig needs to continue to progress. They can't take steps backward. They need to keep taking steps forward. Kyle Busch or not, AJ Allmendinger gives this team a legitimate shot at the chase. And I know people have pointed out, well, maybe they'll use multiple drivers again. That's possible, and while it might be the cheaper option, the notes that you're building aren't as beneficial as working with one driver all the time, because a setup that works for one driver doesn't mean it's going to work for another driver, because driving styles matter. It is that simple. So yes, I believe AJ Allmendinger is returning full-time to the Cup Series. I believe there's proof here that backs that up. There was rumors earlier. The dude's 40 years old, racing the best, he has the best results of his life right now. Kevin Harvick's 46. There's no reason AJ Allmendinger, if he wants to, can't do this for 4, 5, 6 more years on a successful level with a schedule that benefits his strengths. I think when we look back at Justin Haley's comments about fighting for his ride and fighting for his life, you really got to evaluate why he would make those comments, because he's been fine this year. I think he should have been better than he's been at road courses. I don't know if he's been aggressive enough. It sounds like that's been an issue on the radio. He's a better road racer than he's shown this year. He's also been able to learn under Allmendinger's wing all this time, just like Ross Chastain did, just like Chris Buescher did. If you don't think AJ Allmendinger's had an effect on those drivers and their ability to run on road courses, then I don't know what to tell you, because he absolutely does. Not only is he the best road racer in the sport, period, because he's not running the Hendrick-powered cars or Gibbs-powered cars, and yet he's still challenging for wins. There is nobody on his level. There is nobody better than him on road courses, and there's 6 of them now. But if Kyle Busch isn't coming, there's no reason for Justin Haley to make those comments, because then it'd be him and AJ if AJ already has a deal in place to go back to the Cup Series. But if Kyle Busch is coming, or is close to coming, all of a sudden your 2 charters are filled. Now, is he fighting for his life to show that, he's worthy of them spending $15 or $20 million on a third charter? Possibly. That could be what he means. We'll have to wait and see. But obviously he was frustrated after Daytona. There's more to this. There is plenty of evidence to show that Kyle Busch is, at least has a good chance of coming to Kaulig, and AJ Allmendinger is almost definitely going back to Cup racing. Maybe I'll be wrong about this. You just never know, but I think there's enough evidence out there to support both. And I'll tell you what, if you're a Kaulig Racing fan, dream scenario, for me anyways, my picture-perfect dream scenario, we'll jump more into the Xfinity side of things on episode number 2, and then we'll also touch on Darlington on episode number 2. This one's run a little long, apologies. But I think the other thing that you have to look at here is AJ Allmendinger and Kyle Busch would give Kaulig basically what 23XL is working with. You'd have to assume that Kaulig would receive more factory backing, bringing a guy like Kyle Busch in. Chevy's going to be part of those negotiations. That's a big thing too, possibly even paying part of his salary. So all that to consider. Maybe that doesn't happen, and Kaulig's still in a much better position with AJ Allmendinger in a Cup car than without him there. I do think that just like dream scenario for me, you get the third charter and you run Kyle Busch, Justin Haley, and AJ Allmendinger together in the Cup Series. And then the Xfinity Series, whether John Hunter Nemechek comes over and runs one of the Xfinity cars, whether Justin Haley goes back down to Xfinity. To me, you run 2 full-time Xfinity cars next year and you keep a third one open for whenever the Cup guys want to go racing. You run Allmendinger at 5 of the, because they can only run 5 times. So AJ would run 5 road courses. I would assume Kyle Busch may or may not want to run more Xfinity. If Justin Haley sticks in a Cup car, you can run him in 5 races as well. So the whole trophy hunting aspect, because obviously, even with Kyle Busch winning a race next year is not going to be a walk in the park. But to still have those shots at the Xfinity trophies while improving your Cup program makes sense. And then there's the truck side of it, and then there's an ARCA side of it. And Kaulig has a chance here to create a pipeline. Kaulig and Kyle Busch, alongside AJ Allmendinger, have a chance to leave a legacy with this team. I know people get married to their powerhouse teams in Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing and Penske, and that's great and all. But new teams coming into the sport, new owners coming into the sport, spending mega money to become a contender is healthy for the sport. The sport needs more of that to survive, in my opinion. And why not Kaulig Racing? People can come up with every reason they want for why not Kaulig Racing. But on this first episode of the Trophy Hunters podcast, I feel like I've laid enough evidence down to, well, maybe it's not a sure thing Kyle Busch is coming. You should at least now think that there's a damn good chance it's coming. And AJ Allmendinger, for me, is all but a done deal to the Cup Series. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe it's Action Industries that'll sponsor Kyle Busch. But they seem very tied to AJ Allmendinger, and it's best for the team. Anyways, I hope that we have put a smile on that face. Enjoy the rest of your day. Kaulig Racing's here. The Trophy Hunters podcast is here. Normally episodes will not be this long. We won't be having half-an-hour discussions. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you're excited. Silly season's here. There's a lot left to go. Tune into episode number 2 after Darlington. And we can't wait to have you. Be sure to click that like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section below. Do you think Justin Haley should lose his ride? I don't. Do you think Allmendinger is going full-time Cup ride with Kaulig next year? I do. I think he's absolutely going, and probably for the next several years, if I'm being honest. And do you think Kyle Busch could end up at Kaulig Racing? Does he get an ownership stake? I know that's a speculation out there. I'm not sure Matt Kaulig would be jumping at the bit for that necessarily, but we'll have to wait and see. What do you think? Comment down below. We would love to hear your thoughts. Let's build this racing community, and let us know what you think. If we should shorten the podcast up, if we should keep it to a half an hour. We will have guests coming on with us occasionally. We love this community. We love the Allmendinger fans. We love the Kaulig fans. Big things ahead, not only for our guy AJ, but our team Kaulig Racing. Have a great day.
Kaulig Racing. Matt Kaulig, you're the man. Let's party.
AJ Allmendinger will cross the yard of bricks, the winner of the first ever road course race for the Cup Series.
Let's go!